Hello, everybody. Tim Hughes here. I'm the CEO and co-founder of DLA Ignite. With me today, I've got Matthew Francis, and we're going to talk about his book, which is called Ruskie, Beers, and Babushkas. Babushkas. That's it. The not so definitive guide on how to do business in Russia. Matthew, welcome to the show. Where can people find you?
Well, good morning, Tim. It's great to be here. Where can people find me? They can find me at my website, which is www.matthewfrancisauthor.com. So it's matthewfrancisauthor.com.
Matthew, this is hilarious. This book. I couldn't stop laughing. It was just one of those where I couldn't sit drinking tea because I would just end up spitting my tea out. It's just really, really funny. Explain to people the inspiration behind it.
Okay, well, I had quite a sensible upbringing from the perspective that I originally trained as a solicitor. But when I was working for one of the big firms in London, I had a Ukrainian girlfriend called Veronica. And Veronica was very beautiful, very intelligent, but also recommended that Russia was at that time, and this was
This is
in
how long ago?
2002. Sorry?
How long ago is this?
This was 2002.
Okay.
So, and she said Russia at that time was very much emerging as a serious country to be doing business in for companies in the West, and that they really needed basic advice on how to do business, building relationships, expanding into overseas markets, selling their products, services overseas. And so basically, it was the right place to be at the right time to offer advice and guidance on doing business. And so I decided that I would go there and do an English language training course, and just get a taste of what Moscow was like and whether this really was true, that Russia was genuinely opening up to the rest of the world.
So this is your story, isn't it, of how after that conversation with Veronica, you decided to go to Moscow. The way that you were going to get into Moscow was that you did an English language teacher training course in Moscow, and then in effect that was a Trojan horse for you to then find out what it was like in Moscow and then start maybe selling services.
It absolutely was. And being a former solicitor from the UK in Moscow, going in and talking about English language training. Oh, and by the way, are you interested in expanding your business? What would you like to do with your business? At which point the response was, you need to speak to our CEO or our CFO, because we really need to be doing business in the West. That's what we need to be doing. And if you can help us do that, then that's great. So in theory, at that time, this was very sensible, practical business consultancy that I was offering to Russian companies that wanted to do business overseas. But very, very soon, it all started going a bit Pete Tong, shall we say.
Yes. So if you're listening in the States, Pete Tong in the UK is a saying that we have, which is Cockney rhyming slang for Pete Tong. It all went very wrong. So to set the scene, and I need to say this, that if you don't like things that are politically correct, don't read this book. It's not for you, because it talks about the 2002 time, and it talks about Russia at the time, and it is not politically correct. Though Matthew is telling the truth about what happened. So to set the scene, Veronica, after you'd only had 2 dates with her or something like that, basically contacted you and left you because in those days we had answering machines. She left you an answering machine message that if you didn't marry her, she would cut her fingers off.
Yes, the exact wording was something along the lines of, Matthew, you'll never find anyone who loves you the way that I do, and I'm going to prove my love to you by cutting off my fingers and sending them to you as proof of my love. At which point I was stood there.
And you said that you were
amazement.
sharing a flat with somebody, and you came back and you pressed the button on the answering machine to play the little tape, and you both just like stared.
It was absolute shock, because my housemate at the time was a government lawyer and very conservative, shall we say, as a person, and he just looked at me and he's just like, this is absolutely incredible. He said, this is just crazy on a whole different level.
So anyway, you get to Moscow.
Yes.
And actually the language course is a great way of networking, because you met people not necessarily from the West, but you met English speaking people that you could network with. Now it seemed to be that I don't know, you could have a drinking game with this book, because every time you mention the word vodka, you could take a shot. You mentioned in the book that vodka was drunk if you had a bad day. Vodka was drunk if you had a good day. And you explain in detail about going out. Oh yeah, we had a couple of bottles of vodka, and we started on beers and that. You drank a lot, Matthew.
Yes, I think from a Western perspective, there is the perception that Russians drink a lot, but to be honest, they absolutely do. And certainly from a vodka perspective, you go into a bar and they would serve vodka in, like, 100 milliliters, 250 milliliters, 500 milliliters. And it would not be unusual to go into a bar and you'll find Russian men, especially, sitting there with what looks like a jug of water, and a beer, and they'll sit there and they'll be drinking their beer, but then chasing it with the vodka, and they would go through half a liter of vodka and quite a few beers in the evening, as if we were drinking a glass of wine and having water on the side. That was the way that beer and vodka were drank. It was shocking, to be honest. But yes, they did end up drinking quite a lot.
And in terms of the business, I mean, you actually met some people that to form a business with. And I don't want to give too much away in terms of some of the outcomes, but you actually had quite a lot of success, didn't you, in terms of going out and meeting people, because a lot of it was based on connection, wasn't it?
Completely. And the English language course, it gave me a reason to be going into companies and talking to them about their challenges and their issues and what they want to do with their business. But it also enabled me to meet business partners, both local business partners and international business partners. And what I will say is there's a lot of perception of Russians being dishonest or such like, and to be honest, my experience of Russians was nothing like that at all. Yes, they drank quite a bit, but the most dishonest person that I met out there was a business advisor who used to work for one of the big accountancy firms, and was from Zimbabwe, and he was the most dishonest person, and stole quite a lot of money from me. So he was more dishonest than any of the Russians. So yeah.
But there was a lot of it was based on connection, wasn't it? And it was about, so it wasn't like what you did when you got there was that you cold called everybody. It was more about you networked and you went to certain events, and you knew that also if you went to certain bars, there would be a particular type of person at the bar. And I think one of the things that you also found was that you needed to learn the language a bit, didn't you?
Mm. Yes, I mean, picking up on the bar's perspective, what I found that there was quite a big expatriate community out there, and certainly taking example, Silver's Irish Bar in the centre of Moscow, um, you would find, yes, there would be a lot of Englishmen, Irishmen, South Africans, people from the English speaking world in that bar. But you would also find there was a lot of Russian executives who wanted to improve their English. And the best way to do that is to actually be speaking to native English people. So they would come into the bar, and it was almost like a hotbed of Westerners, but also Russians who were keen to improve their English, who were usually very senior within Russian companies and interested in doing business in the West. So it was networking to the extreme. I suppose the way that you would know you used to be able to do networking in the UK back in the 80s, walking into a bar and getting talking to people about their problems, and off the back of that doing business with them. And that was very much the way that expatriate bars like Silver's was in Moscow between 2002 and 2010, I would say.
Yeah, I mean, I've been to Moscow and I've done training courses in English, and the feedback I had as I had a person, a Russian, actually working for me, and it was the view was that at a high level there was a very good understanding of English. The next level down, you might not actually get that, but certainly at the top level, certainly the feedback that I was giving, I work for an American company, was that
Mhm.
you could do business in Moscow in English.
No question at all. So much so that, yes, I had to know a certain amount of basic Russian. Of course, I did. Just to get by on the streets and such like, go to the shops and things. But the actual doing business, they wanted to do business in English, and they wanted to learn about how to do business in English. And we're talking quite basic stuff. Bear in mind, Russia had only recently opened up to the West, and this idea of the basic things that we would take for granted, having an English website, or having a customer service team that were able to speak in English for doing business with people overseas. It didn't really happen over there. So there was so much basic advice that was needed across the whole board of doing business, whether it be marketing, business development, finding partners overseas, or just having conversations and building up relationships and finalizing deals in the English language. This was all so important.
So one of the, I mean, to give a good example of that without giving away too much of the story, is that you still had traditional Russian, which were in effect Soviet shops. And in the
Yes.
Soviet shop, you had to go up, and there would be what you describe as a little old lady behind it, and you would write down what it was, what you wanted, and hand that in, and then she'd give you a ticket, and you'd have to go and pay for it.
Yep.
And then you went over there and paid for it. And if you didn't pay with the exact money, she shouted at you. And then when you paid for it, you went back with a docket to say that you'd actually bought what you got, and then they gave it to you. At which point you'd remember that you needed something else. So you then
Yep.
had to fill out another form and give it to her, and then she gave you another form to go to the till.
Yes. Ab- Absolutely. And in the most extreme, you have, and very very much from a cross-cultural perspective, there were just things that would happen that were just so Russian, and yet we couldn't really relate to in the West. I mean, for example, some of the best bread that you can buy is from a little, almost like a little caravan on the street, but where you'd have a square hole where you would look in and they would then serve you. You point the bread that you'd want, and they would then serve you the bread, and then you'd pay the money, and then you'd take it. Well, on one occasion, I'd come out of the supermarket with all of my bags, and I'd put the bags down as I was looking with my head through the little square hole to choose which bread, and I was pointing which bread that I wanted. The next thing I knew, I came back out from there with the bread, and looked over to my left, and this sweet little old lady, this little babushka, sweet little old lady, was running up the street with all my shopping bags. At which point I pursued her, I chased after her, and I stopped her. At which point she started screaming, and then these policemen, militia, came over, and she obviously explained to them that this aggressive foreigner had just attacked her and was trying to steal her shopping. They seemed to realise what had gone on, but the long and the short of it was that they then helped her carry my bags up the road to her house and told me to get on my way. And it was just so extreme, but it was hilarious looking back. But at the time, it was incredibly traumatic.
I remember being on holiday in Moscow, and
Yeah.
the person I was with, and we said we'd like to go to our guide. We'd like to go to the Bolshoi Ballet. Yeah, of course, that's possible. He said, "There's only one slight problem. What's that? You can only go to the ballet if you've been in the country for 30 days." The reason
Right.
why we do this is that it's to stop. It's in effect to stop tourists, so that Russians could go. Otherwise, it just fills up with tourists. Okay, what can we do about it? She says, "I'll make a phone call, and we meet a man under a bridge. You
Mm-hmm.
give him the money for the tickets in cash, and he won't give you change.
Yep.
And it's all sorted." And that's what happened. We met this man under the bridge. We gave him the money. We got these tickets, and when we expected to go, we were expecting them to go neat or something like that. But they worked, and we went to the Bolshoi Ballet.
The black market economy in Moscow, especially, but throughout Russia, is rife and still is. You can literally buy almost anything in the Moscow underground system. You want a fake Harvard Business School degree, you can get one for if you pay somebody $100. I was even offered a blue flashing police lamp that you could put on top of your car and turn on so that it helped you go through the traffic quicker. But for that they wanted $1,000 and everything is it's the underground black market dollar economy and still exists there for almost everything. You can get everything provided you pay the right price.
So in the last 2 minutes, so and I don't want to give too much away, but Matthew decides because Matthew decides that he's. So you're what, 25 there? Was it 27?
2027 when I first went there, and about 35 when I came back. So yeah.
So he's looking for a friend, a life partner, and he meets a girl on the train, thinks that seems like a nice person, so he decides to cook her Christmas dinner, because in Russia they don't do Christmas like that. So she was really interested. So Matthew does the tree and goes out and gets all the Christmas dinner. What he didn't explain was when the woman stole his bags, it was actually the Christmas dinner that he'd basically got. So he had to go back to the shop to buy it again. Anyway, so he makes the Christmas dinner, and he'd even cooked a cake, a Christmas cake. And nobody in Russia, in Moscow, could understand why you would cook a cake and leave it because if you cook a cake, you eat it. And they just couldn't fathom this out. Anyway, he does this. He does this. This is dinner. Works out really well. Anyway, there's a knock on the door, and some friends arrive with vodka. knock on the door, more friends arrive with more vodka. Anyway, there's a whole number. It's like it's kind of like one of the crescendos towards the end of the book. And there's all kinds of characters, because you build the characters up as we go through and there's all kinds of great stories about the business. But what happens is all of these characters basically come together to this one scene where ultimately the flat that you were renting, the chandelier in basically someone grabs hold of it and the whole thing comes down. What a great time.
Yes. And there are probably in the end about 75% of the people in my flat that I had no idea who they even were. Word had just spread in the community. This chap's having a party. Just come around and bring vodka. Oh, and there's free Christmas cake. And you won't believe this nutter. He cooked a Christmas cake 6 weeks before it needs to be eaten, and he's been feeding it with brandy. He's obviously crazy.
So Matthew, where can I get a copy of your book?
You get it at the website, which is www.matthewfrancisauthor.com. And
I think I got this off Amazon, so it's available on Amazon. Yeah,
it's also available on Amazon, and I'm actually going to be doing a book signing on the 21st of July at the Squirrel Pub in Rugby, Warwickshire, at 4 p.m. So yes, ironically, in a pub, which seemed appropriate.
Matthew, it's a hilarious book, and as I say, if you don't like anything this is not a politically correct book, but hilarious. And I thought it was great fun. It is really great fun. And we can get you on, so we can get the book from Amazon. We can get you on LinkedIn, can't we?
Yes, you can. Absolutely.
Matthew, thank you so much for coming on.